Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Bruno Hellman. I am the Advocacy Kids Program Coordinator for IDF, but I am also a young leader in diabetes training. It's my huge pleasure to be your moderator on this online event, on which we'll be discussing on the importance of physical activity to manage and prevent diabetes. I would like to say that the kids program is supported by an educational grant from Sanofi, and thanks to their work and their support, this program is existing and able to deliver such impact. So if you could please move to the next slide. Some housekeeping rules. So as you receive the notification, this webinar will be recording. You can generate your Zoom subtitles for this webinar by clicking on the closed caption button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Please note these subtitles will not be 100% accurate. The recording, the slides, and the feedback questionnaire will be sent to all registrants in a few days. So please keep an eye on your emails. And those participants who attend at least 60 minutes of this live event will receive an attendance certificate. And please remember to use the Q&A function to post your question to speakers and panelists. Next slide, please. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our first panelist. So next slide, please. Dr. Fiona Bu, who is the head of unit of physical activity under the Department of Health Promotion at the World Health Assembly. Thank you very much for joining us today, Fiona, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And a big thanks to IDF and the Kids Program, to Bruno and his team and colleagues of the Kids Program. This is a wonderful opportunity, and I'm delighted to join you from WHO based in Geneva, Switzerland, to bring to you and to the discussion today the work we're doing on physical activity and a global perspective on the opportunities we have to get more people benefiting from physical activity. Next slide. I want to, over the next 6 or 7 minutes, talk about the benefits, talk about the global action plan, and talk about some of the work that WHO is doing. But first, let's just remind ourselves, of course, of the benefits of physical activity. And behind this very simple slide is a very large amount of epidemiological evidence that is and showing the benefits of physical activity. Importantly, even at the lowest levels, there are benefits. They do increase as you look at the green line, and there is a recommended range shown here for adults of 150 to 300 minutes per week. At the lower level, that's around 30 minutes a day. It's relevant to all ages and all people of all abilities. WHO and our population health approach focuses where that big round circle is, getting more people from sitting to moving and more people moving to the recommended range. We acknowledge fully that there are more benefits at the upper level, but we also note that that's where, with higher levels of intensity and amounts, the risks do start to increase. And all of this is summarized in our WHO guidelines of 2020. Next slide. There's lots of details in there that expand on the types of physical activity that are good for health. And I should add, good for the prevention of diabetes in particular. And it's a combination of aerobic as well as muscle strength training in particular. And we recommend a combination of these. The evidence on diabetes is that it's a combination. Either type of physical activity and a combination can provide the preventive benefits of those at risk of and those living with diabetes. I mentioned that in particular. Next slide. because it's not just the prevention. In our recent guidelines, we looked not only at different age groups, but also in pregnancy, also for those living with chronic disease, including diabetes. And I'm sure most people on this call are familiar either with your own national guidelines, but these are the global guidelines available in multiple languages from our website. Next slide. And it's important because non-communicable disease remains the leading cause of death. And you can see here some of the data, and physical activity is relevant. It's one of the recognized risk factors. We can prevent between 3 to 5 million of these deaths. And we're particularly focusing on preventing the premature deaths, estimated to be around 15 million people a year. That is deaths that could be prevented or delayed. Next slide. And we'll see in this slide, it's important because the levels of physical activity that we have looked at now and going back 15 or so years shows our progress is too slow. It's flat. The differences between men and women, between green on the upper and blue on the lower line, remain constant, slightly widening even in recent years. And this is showing around 1/3 of women and 1/4 of men don't meet that recommended level. So we've got a large task, about 1 billion people we want to meet the recommended. Next slide. It's not even, because when you look at this data, I'm showing you in different country groupings. You can see that there are more active regions in sub-Saharan Africa and in Southeast Asia. But look at the left, Latin America, high income Asia. We are seeing much higher levels, reaching 45% in women and higher in men. So it's not even, but it's a problem in most parts of the world. Next slide. And of course, we've set goals for the Sustainable Development Goals, reducing non-communicable disease, and in particular, a goal for increasing physical activity. Aligned to 2030, we've set a goal with all member states, 194 countries, agreeing to reach a 15% improvement. So the big question is, how are we going to do that? And that's where I can introduce in the next slide the Global Action Plan on Physical Activity. 4 strategic policy areas shown here in the bright, bold colours, providing countries, communities and cities with the key policy actions which all communities should be implementing and benefiting from. I'll briefly talk to them. In red, it's about the education, communications, promotion, changing knowledge, attitudes, norms, and cultures. Number 2 is the green, and that's about making the environment safe and accessible for people to be active in ways they enjoy. Number 3 in yellow is about the programs, the opportunities in all of health, school, education, and community settings. And number 4 in blue is the policy area which gets the government governance and measurement and evaluation right. The other 3 won't happen unless we get it sustainably implemented through formal challenges and channels and, of course, partnerships. Next slide. When we look at the Global Action Plan inside the document available on the WHO website, you'll see it's broken down into the policy actions in the 4 areas with something for everyone to contribute. And that's why the partnership around working with physical activity is so important. I wanted to highlight the primary healthcare because for people living with diabetes or people at risk of diabetes, no matter their age, the healthcare system should be providing the right advice regularly and reinforcing the role of physical activity. I'm sure there'll be some questions about how we're doing in that area in particular. Next slide. When we launched the Global Action Plan, spoke to countries and the communities and non-government organisations like IDF, we asked what are the tasks we need to do to support countries, and you're seeing them here on this slide. There are 10 areas and time doesn't allow me to talk to all of them, but building tools, supporting partnerships, advocacy are just some of them. Next slide. And developing the tools, I want to introduce you and invite you to download not only the Global Action Plan and our guidelines, but the toolkit Active. And we are producing modules for each of the policy areas. And already we have one for digital tools, for primary healthcare, for schools. And we invite you to look at those. We're working on more, and you'll see them forthcoming this year and next. Next slide. And I want to make an announcement that knowing how well we're doing, tracking country progress on global action is important. And next month, we'll be launching the first of a global status report on physical activity. So I hope I can rely on IDF and all of you here to join us on 19th of October to hear how countries are going using the latest data, tracking country progress. Next slide. And I hope you come and join us with our website, and all those materials are available. Thank you very much for the opportunity to outline our agenda and our collaboration on this work. Over to you, Bruno.
Thank you very much, Fiona. It's always wonderful to hear from you. I would like to remind everyone to keep using the chat. We see a lot of conversation going on through there, and I'm pleased to say we are almost 300 people live watching this fantastic webinar. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Denise Franco, who is the Secretary of the Brazilian Diabetes Society and Director of the Institute Running for Diabetes, speaking direct from Brazil. Denise, over to you.
Thank you, Bruno, and hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here to talk an aspect that I love. That's my daily life. And I'd like to go to the direct from my next slide, and then I will move now to aspect to focus on diabetes now. It's not familiar to everyone that we have a great number of diabetes all over the world. We know that 1 in 10 has diabetes in the age of 20 to 79. And it's not a good number, but we have 537 million people all over the world. And we have to do something. And as Fiona explained, we have to change the lifestyle of our population. Otherwise, we will not be able to take care of a lot of people that have diabetes. And one of the aspects that we have to change is to have an effective behavior management, and also try to have a psychological well-being. That's a fundamental to be achieved in the treatment goal for people with diabetes. And to achieve this goal, we have to prepare this population to be taking care of them. So they need a diabetes education, they need support, the medical nutrition therapy, and also to have a routine physical activity, and also smoke cessation, and to be taking care also for psychological care. And can I have the next slide, please? So the physical activity is one of the pillar of the diabetes treatment, and also can be a solution to management the reduction of weight in this population, not only for type 1 and type 2 diabetes, but also for the ones that lives with glycemic intolerance, and also has to take care of them even in the weight management. So we have to have an individual eating plan for all this population and lifestyle intervention programs. Can I have the next slide, please? We know that lifestyle intervention for diabetes prevention can be a huge goal, a huge treatment, as we know from these trials. We know from DTP trial and this trial that I present, there are examples of how we can change the diabetes movement and the evolution, or if we do some lifestyle interventions. we can reduce the PPIF trial was one of the good example that was able to reduce the 58% all over the 3 years of diabetes evolution or development. Can I have the next slide, please? And how is the action or what the physical activity improvement that you have related to the blood glycemia? So physical activity is very, very critical for blood glucose management. And also exercise can improve the glycemia control, not only for type 2 diabetes, and also for type 1, for all diabetes, and the people who are living with glucose intolerance. If we see the results for type 2 diabetes, we also have benefits on cardiovascular risk. We can reduce the weight and also improve the well-being. It's important for all the population that lives with diabetes to introduce regular exercise on their lives. Can I have the next slide? So what are the recommendations for people with diabetes? As we saw with Fiona, what are the recommendations for people with general population? When you look at the people with diabetes, for children and adolescents, we recommend 60 minutes per day or more of moderate and vigorous intensity aerobic activity, at least 3 days per week of vigorous muscle stressing and bone stretching activities. For adults with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, we recommend 150 minutes per day or more of moderate and vigorous intensity aerobic activity per week, is spread all over at least 3 days a week. But it's important to mention that we recommend that don't spend less than 2 days, not less than 2 days. We have to be moving if we have 1 or 2 days, not more than that, without physical activity. And also there is a recommendation of 2 to 3 sections per week of resistant exercise on non-consecutive days. There's a very good thing that we have to advise to our patients or the people with diabetes, that they have to be activity. Don't be sitting for more than 30 minutes without moving. So we have to recommend that. And for the elderly people, we recommend at least 2 or 3 times a week for flexibility and balanced training. That's very important to this population. There are some tips, so I have to give the checklist for everyone. So I would like to move to the next slide, please. And the checklist is very simple. We have 4 steps. Try minimum 150 minutes of moderate, vigorous, intensity aerobic exercise per week. Include resistance exercise, strength training more than 2 times a week. Set a physical activity goals and involving a multidisciplinary team if available, and minimizing uninterrupted sedentary time. So if we do that, we are doing the best thing for our life. So can I have the next slide, please? And there are some tips there for the type 1 and type 2, for all the types of diabetes, to start, how to start, and to be safe during the physical activity. Discuss with your health care team before starting any new exercise. Check your blood glucose levels before starting, and if it's possible, during and after the exercise. Carry with you always something that you can correct for hypoglycemia, so carbohydrates. And the most important, have fun. And remember, every move counts. Can I have the last one, please? So we used to say that exercise is a huge power medicine. Even in a small dose, it can make a difference on your life. So you can change diabetes using this medicine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Really insightful. So now it's my great pleasure to invite other three amazing panelists. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So Ms. Marie Bastark, who is from the Impact and Legacy Director, who is the Impact and Legacy Director from the organizing committee of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, Paris 2024. Nupur Lalvani, who is a IDF Blue Circle Voice member and the president of the Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation. And Mr. Philippe Demetri, who is a Rugby 7 professional athlete and an Olympic medalist. I also invite Denise and Fiona to join us back for a really productive and promising discussion. Okay, so now that we are all here, I'd like to start with you, Marie. We know that the Olympic Games impact goes beyond the sports competition itself. Like as a big sport fan, we know that it's all about that spirit of cooperation. But once the events are gone, right, there's supposed to be a legacy left for the community, for the nation. So on that note, can you please tell us what is the role of the Paris 2024 Legacy Committee?
Yes, thank you very much for your question, and hello to everyone. I'm so pleased to talk today in your panel. It's a great opportunity for Paris 2024. So as you said, we are going to organize the biggest world event in sports in the world, but we have a strong commitment in terms of legacy, because we want that French people understand that because we organize the game, we have a change in our society. There is a benefit for them because our country organized the game. And our first objective is to combat sedentarity. It's really what we want to leave. We really want to leave some measures, some actions that are combating sedentarity. And in order to do so, we tackle the kids, because we know, and the doctors are saying it, that everything is playing between 6 and 11. If you don't move enough between 6 and 11, and you have to move 1 hour a day, Mrs. Franco just explained that, you will be a sedentary adult. You won't be active when you will be an adult. So we concentrate our action on the kids, and we developed a program at school. It's an emblematic action, and this program, if I can say a word about it, was launched like an experimentation at first, because we look at what existing already in the world to combat sedentarity for kids, and we find this inspiration in Finland, where they implement an action about 30 minutes of physical activity at school. So because of the good result of this experimentation in Finland, we share it to our Ministry of Education, and we convince him to launch an experimentation. And 2 years after the launch of this experimentation, 30% of schools in France are implementing the program and are very happy about it. And today it's a great day for Paris 2024 and for France, because it's a day where the kids are coming back to school. And the president of our republic decided to disseminate these programs to all the schools in France. We have 30,000 schools in France, and now we are going to go from 10,000 implementing this program to 3,000. So it's a good success for us. Our legacy is already on track. It is very important for the health of the kids, of course, but also, as you know, the health of the adults that they will be tomorrow. And it's also very concrete and the best way to show how the game can be useful for our country, because the role of Paris 2024 in that project was to talk about it. We mobilized lots of doctors to explain the situation, why we need to move on and to combat sedentarity, because it's like a bomb, an atomic bomb for our country. Secondly, we give some materials. So we provide kids with sports materials to schools. We spend that to the 10,000 schools. And we also mobilize some teachers to give guidelines to the teachers to set up the activity, because you have to set up activity every day. So you need to change the activity every day and have some new ideas. So we have a website, Génération 2024, Generation 2024, where the teacher can find everything they need to implement the action. So that's what we have done so far, and we are very happy to share this project with you today, especially the day where it's disseminating in all the schools in France.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So we know that the influence that sporticians can have on influencing and inspiring small children and youth also. And here we have, I would say, the first in a while pro athlete who won an Olympic game medal, Felipe, who won the Rugby 7 bronze medal back in Tokyo 2020 last year. So Felipe, could you please tell us how your relation with sport started, and if somehow it has been impacted by your diagnosis with type 1 diabetes?
Hi, Bruno. Well, hello to everyone. Thank you for joining. First of all, I want to tell you that I'm now 28 years old. I first debuted on diabetes when I was 13. So when I had diabetes, like knowing it for the first time, because I didn't really know at that moment what it was, I was already like a really sport guy. Like I loved doing sport already, so it was very easy for me. But it was also a shock, because the first thing I asked the doctor when I started doing the clinics and the checks and stuff was if I could continue doing sport, right? Because I knew, like, for example, hypertension, you can have certain times where it's not good for you and stuff. Well, they encouraged me to have a really sportive like lifestyle, I would say. And since they told me that, like, it was like, all right, so this is what I like to do, and they encouraged me to do it like often. And what I can do is all days. I always made this to clear up. I didn't start doing sport because I thought I would become an Olympian or an Olympic medalist or stuff like that. Like, I really loved doing sport. I enjoyed it, because for me, the sport is just gathering with people, having friends, sharing stuff. And that's the great thing of sports. And I always admired people that went far, and they're really like motivational stories and lives. So for me, it was just enjoying it and try to do it because it was good for me. So for me, it was really easy. But I always encourage people also that you don't have to get far or be living off a sport as a job. You can just find the job, the sport anywhere you can. Like for me, like walking maybe half an hour every day, it's a sport. Like if you want to go and hang around with your dog, just jogging or stuff like that, it's already a really good stuff for you to do. So I always tell people, like, just do something. I believe that everybody has a sport in their life that they were meant to be. It can be something in the sea or in the streets or running or track and field, anything. You just have to experience things, try to see all the things you can in the way, and eventually you will like something. So I always tell people to go and look for it.
I totally agree with you. It's just, I think, a matter of finding what works for you based on many like components there are, such your location, your availability, but we all agree, as Fiona said, that every move counts. So Nupur, you also live with type 1 diabetes. How old were you when you were first diagnosed, and somehow has that impacted your decision to start running?
Thank you, Bruno. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Team IDF. I was diagnosed when I was 8 years old, and I live in India. So I had a very normal upbringing, and luckily for me, my parents were extremely supportive. The reason I started running, and I ran for fun, and when Felipe said that, pick an exercise that you enjoy, I think that really resonated with me. So I enjoyed running, and I started running because of my father. My father's a runner, and I thought that if my father can run, so can I. So type 1 diabetes didn't come in the way of running for me. Of course, there is an additional, there are a lot of additional things to look after. You have to carry your hypo treatment. You have to make sure you're going to be okay, carry some medical ID. But all said and done, it's incredible and very, very liberating to exercise freely and happily. Thank you.
Yeah, I resonate to that. As you know, as we have talked before, I also started running because of my dad. So definitely we can see the importance that our family members play on stimulating our start with specific sports. I know that although you managed to accomplish amazing things through sports, both of you, Felipe and Nupur, have you ever felt any type of discrimination because you were athlete with living with diabetes? Have you ever been encouraged by someone because of the sports you do? Starting with Nupur.
So really long back, many years ago, when I was about to run my first marathon, there was a doctor who said, "Do you have to do this?" And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I ran the marathon eventually. But I think what's important is for people to be encouraged to do what they enjoy doing. Be it running, dancing, any form of sport. Or exercise. So I've never personally faced any sort of discrimination or such kind of an incident. It is a little being singled out sometimes is a little awkward. So I was running the Twin Cities Marathon in 2016, and I had a hypo along the route. So I sat down on the road and treated my hypo with some glucose gel. And that attracted a bit of attention. The organizers were concerned and I was embarrassed. But apart from the regular stuff, really nothing much.
What about you, Feli?
Well, in my case, I didn't really feel like discrimination. I always feel like people getting surprised of doing sport and stuff like that. Like, really, like, you have diabetes. And I'll say like, yeah, I don't know why you're surprised about that. But I always take it like a challenge for myself, just to push as far as I can for myself and to prove people also like, well, I think being in the Olympic Games is a really proof of that. But anyway, I didn't really mind, because if I felt good with what I was doing, I really wasn't scared. I think it's very important for people to do investigation, to do research, to talk to doctors and to other people like us, for example, just to gather a lot of information and grow in confidence and try to do it. I wouldn't say like, maybe you like diving, okay, go and dive like 2 hours. No, okay, you can just start doing small steps. But I think that gives you confidence and it reminds you that you can do it. So for me, it's just something for yourself and just for yourself.
Perfect. Denise, we all know, like, we have three living cases here, me, Felipe, and Nupur, on the road that our families played on us finding what worked for us. But recently you had a major change in terms of adoption physical activity into your personal life. Like, what has that been influenced somehow by running for diabetes? So we see also a process of, despite I don't like this term, but your patients, the people that you support with their caring, also influencing healthcare professionals on their healthy habits, let's put this way. Your microphone is closed.
Sorry, we have a conflict of interest because we know each other, and you know how I changed my life during the pandemic. Everyone put a lot of weight, and I do exactly the same because I introduced more activity, physical activity in my life. And it was amazing because from the beginning, I was doing only to myself because I have to spend my time. I received as a gift 2 dogs, small dogs, but I have to take care of them. And also I got a new gym, and in this gym I could walk with my dog and stop my dog there and try to introduce physical activity. And in the end, I was playing and being like an influencer because every day I was at the gym and I put my videos saying, I am here and I'm having fun and I'm doing exercise. I was able to lose more than 10 kilos during the 2 years. And also I could change the life of my patients because every day when they come to my office, they say, I am seeing you and you are an inspiration for me to go home, to wake up, go to walk, or at least go to the gym. So thank you and go home. And so since then I'm moving and I start going to the gym every day from Sunday to Sunday, like something that can relax and also can influence my patients. And so that's a good point. I like it.
That's amazing. I would like to read from our attendees if they play any sports or if they practice any sort of physical activity. Would be great to learn from different people, from different cultures, what worked for them. So talking about running for diabetes specifically, Denise, what would you highlight have been some of the accomplished by the organization? How has the organization been able to support other people even with diabetes?
I think the main aspect that I can talk is to join people and put them together and be an inspiration one to each other, and also to give to start for the ones that was starting a new physical activity, they had the support. That's something very important when we talk about diabetes population, because sometimes they can live with another complications. For instance, they have diabetes complication, and if you have the support of a team, then can give good orientations and good advice on how to start with security. That's something very important. So I think that the main points are that, like to find a way when you have your pair, and also as an inspiration, and do this exercise, physical activity with security. That's something, and be safe.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I totally resonate on the importance of peer support, and more than that, peer joining to exercising together plays a vital game changer in terms of adoption. As far as I know, Nupur, you have been conducting some really amazing work in India through your organization, Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation. Can you please share a bit more what have you been doing in the ground and some of the impact that you have already generated?
Sure. Thanks, Bruno. So, we have community runs pretty often every month in different cities. Volunteers get together and do a fun run. there are a lot of people that have not run before, and they're concerned about whether they'll be able to do it, whether their blood sugars will go high or low. So this is a chance to talk to each other, learn from each other, meet others like you. Often at our runs, sorry, we have not only children, parents, but also grandparents, dogs, friends. I mean, it's like a little party. Everyone's welcome to come and talk to each other, meet each other, get in a little exercise. So that's something we've been doing. Another thing was in 2019. We had a team of 4 people with type 1 diabetes that did the Oxfam Trail Walker, the 100-kilometer Oxfam Trail Walker. A lot of parents or a lot of caregivers have this concern that if my child has T1, they can't exercise. But really, that's not true at all. With the right care and the right education and the right support, there's nothing that you can't do. So the goal is to be able to reach out to as many people as possible and create a culture of, exercising together, supporting each other, having fun. Thank you.
No, that's really important. And Fiona, as the African proverb would say, it takes a village to raise a child. You mentioned that every community can identify things that they can do better, and we all have a role to play. How people watching this webinar, either live or the recording, can become allies for promoting physical activity behaviors?
Well, thank you, Bruno. You raise a very important point, because we all as citizens and advocates of physical activity and sport have a really important role. And I think a common thread from everyone's contribution so far has been about how important it is to engage everyone, to reach more, to make sure all children in all the communities have got access to the sports and activities they enjoy, whether it's running, cycling, rugby, swimming. It's about having the access. And one of the ways which, apart from doing the physical activity yourself, so we are role models as active people, as family members, as friends to others, in a more advocate way, we can be looking at what makes it difficult for others to be active. And we can look at our own streets and neighborhoods and look at where are the parks, and are they suitable for everyone? Are they accessible to everyone? Are they being used well? Can they be improved in any way? And speak to the communities, speak to the local government, to the municipalities, to the parks administration, and seek for improvements, because the places are really important. We can look at the affordability and the equipment. And this is where sports clubs and obviously governments at all levels, national and local governments and NGOs play a particular role, because sometimes the equipment or access to clubs and fitness and exercise is not affordable. And we have to look at how we can reduce that economic barrier, as well as that sort of threshold of whether you feel comfortable going into those clubs. So I think there's a role for us as community members. I think there's a very big role for those of us who work in the sports sector, in the health sector, in the environment, and in government and in NGO, which means there's a role for everyone. And there's probably multiple roles that we play in different contexts.
Okay, thanks. If I have hear your last sentence correctly, I'm not sure if I heard the education folks play a vital role on that. But we know that since children on school age, we wish to achieve education for all, we know that they, at least legally speaking, they are supposed to spend most of their time in the school environment. Like, what schools can do better to promote healthier and more active environment, especially taking into consideration the huge discrepancies and the inequalities that we have around the world. And on that note, about talking about specificities, do children in different age groups have specific physical activity recommendations in terms of duration and type of physical exercise, physical activity that they should do weekly?
Well, again, the guidelines, which everyone can download, and I provided the web link in the chat box to everyone, will give all of the details. But broadly, we have a headline guideline, and that is relevant for all children. Our guidelines for 5 to 18-year-olds are 1 hour on average every day. We know that, like adults, sometimes you'll be more active on 1 or 2 days than other days. We also know that spreading it out across all days and being active every day is desirable. So there is rather more of an overarching goal, largely because the specific science on every age group, 6-year-olds compared to 8-year-olds, compared to 9-year-olds, let's worry about everyone doing enough and doing more than splitting down to the specifics, because I think I heard earlier about medicalization of this. We know it's good, it's fun, and that's important for children under age of 10. I'd actually question everyone and say, what happens over 10? Because that's where the drop-off happens. So I encourage Paris and other countries hosting mega events to also consider about the teenagers who are being distracted and attracted to other forms of sedentary activities and entertainment. And I challenge the sports sector. What are they offering to attract and retain in rugby, in cycling, in walking? Because the numbers speak. And that is our global challenge. We must not continue to provide more for those who already have. We must reach out to make more opportunities for those who have not as our first priority. I see, Marie, you may be wishing to comment on that.
Yeah.
Please, Marie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Fiona. Perhaps two things to say. The first one is about what Fiona was explaining, that physical activity can be everywhere. There is one possibility, and we are encouraging the cities in France, thanks to the games, also to develop active design in the city, but also in the schoolyard. Because if you have some design of games in the schoolyards, the kids are encouraged to practice and to play. And they play actively. In fact, kids, it's normal. They move. It's there in the DNA of the kids. They move if you give them the possibility to do so. So active design is one of the solutions. Quite easy, it's not expensive, and Paris 2024 provide active design guide for schools, and the Ministry of Education integrate these guides in the Bâti scolaire, which is the Bible to build a new school. We also provided active design for cities for the urban transformation of the cities, to integrate that for all the inhabitants of the city. And also we produce active design guide for companies to also in their offices encourage physical activity at work. And I want to answer the question of Fiona about what we do for the teenagers. Again, today we launch a campaign with the National Health Agency in France, Santé Publique France, dedicated to teenagers, because as Fiona said, this age is crucial because this is a time when the kids are, or teenagers are more sedentary, they have screens, activities, etc. So I will put the link on the chat and you can see what is about this campaign. This campaign is to convince the parents to encourage their kids, teenagers, to practice sports with, of course, a humoristic angle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to see concretely everything that the Legacy Committee has been developing along with different stakeholders in order to foster the promotion and the inclusion. Denise, Brazil as India have been the two countries on which the kids program had been piloted. So since SBD, the Brazilian Diabetes Society, has been one of the founder organizations involved in this project back in 2012, what are some of the key learnings acquired, and back what also have been one of the, or some of the key barriers to implement kids national-wise?
Well, for me, it was a huge pleasure to take part from the beginning of this program, because I was involved in advisory board, and then I introduced the program here in Brazil. And one of the main challenge, it was what we saw doing, what Marie told us, that was the government took part and decided to introduce the program, one program like physical activity for the huge country. So the majority barrier that we have to implement this, it was to go to the government to present the program and to make them to put this program all over Brazil. So that was the main challenge for us. We were able to do all over the country, but the small, how can I say, the small part of them, because it was only one or two cities, and the main program which was done in São Paulo. But what we could see, it's something that we know that, because we were going there, we are present with the teachers and also for the kids. And as Maria told, the children likes to play. So whenever you introduce the program for the teachers, but also doing activity with the children, they like to play, and they could do it better. So what we have to do is like to have to political, how can I say, call attention of them, the importance of doing something to change the lifestyle of our population. Otherwise, we'll not be able to take care of this diabetes problem that we have, because we have to start with the kids, for sure. Otherwise, we'll not be able. That's what we have. One of the major barriers that we had. To go to the society and to call attention, which was not so difficult because we have a partnership. So we were able to engage not the educational one, but the health care in the ministry we could involve, but we could not join with the educational program. So that was something that was still going on. And our diabetes society this year is trying to implement again a new program, including IDF Kids on that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we all agree that grassroots initiatives play an important role, as Fiona was saying back, that everyone plays a vital role, but without political willingness, it's really hard to achieve long-term change. We have seen in France the example, Marie, on which the president Emmanuel Macron, as you said, recently announced that it will mandatory to primary schools to implement the 30 minutes school program. What is the importance based on the path you have gone through on involving those decision makers when it comes to advocating for physical activity?
Yeah, to do this advocacy, we really use the power and the messages sent by the doctors. As I said, it was very important to have them on board. They were very precious. And overall, the best arguments we used was to make the link between physical activity and results at school, because physical activity every day is good for concentration. And I think health, of course, is important, but also to convince a minister of education, it's also important to talk about how learning mathematics, how learning history or French or English or whatever. So I think you may use also those arguments. You have fantastic studies. I can give you those studies from Canada, from Sweden, which clearly make the link between physical activity and concentration and results at school. Finland was the inspiration for us, and we clearly said to the Minister of Education that Finland is at first at the PISA, PISA classement. I don't know the English name. And they are doing physical activity every day. So I think it is very important. And we also use our athletes to promote these messages. It was also very important for us to have some athletes, because athletes can also make good advocacy, and the media likes to interview athletes better than experts sometimes. So it was also interesting to have that. And the athletes are the best to talk to the kids. So when we launched the experimentation, we had regularly some athletes in schools playing with the kids, explaining to the kids the benefits of this activity for their health, but also for their school results. So really, and I really think that athletes can play a major role. And because we are organizing the games, of course, we have this chance to have athletes which want to be on the team of Paris 2024, and they want to be useful. And addressing this message of moving more 1 hour a day for kids, it is clearly something very important for also athletes, because lots of them became athletes because before they played grassroots sports. And of course, physical activity is the first step before sport. You can't practice sports regularly if you are not in a good health. And so today, if you don't practice physical activity during 6 and until 10, when you're a teenager, if you have not done that, you won't enjoy and well, take pleasure to practice sports. That's why how we do it.
Thank you. And speaking concretely of the pilot initiative in France, do you have any figures that you could disclose and share with us in terms of the positive impact that introducing the program had reverted in terms of learning? Is there any study or anything that you could share with the audience?
Not yet, because the measure is quite recent. We have only two years of experimentation, but there is studies ongoing. So I will be happy, of course, to share them when they will be finished. We have lots of questionnaires and interviews of teachers saying that this measure is something positive for their class and for the school, but not impact study yet. But I'm sure that next year I will share that with you with pleasure.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. So, Felipe, Marie just mentioned about the importance that professional athletes have on inspiring, motivating the younger ones. And we know by many studies that one of the key reasons of people living with diabetes, especially those that depend on insulin, for not practicing any physical activity is because they are scared of having hypoglycemias while practicing sports. Since you are one of the biggest examples for our community, definitely a key role model for all of us, me included. When I found out last year that we had a professional athlete living with type 1 diabetes right next to me in Argentina, I felt so proud and well represented. So definitely you have an important role in our community. That said, can you please share with us, especially with those parents and children who want to start practicing sports but are concerned about the hypoglycemias? How do you manage or avoid that during both your trainings and games? And if has ever happened for you to have a hypoglycemia during a competition, and what in case you did, what did you do to reverse that as fast as possible?
Well, first of all, I know hypoglycemia is one of the more things that people get worried about. I think it's real because it's not good to feel like that, and even more be competing or something or doing some sport and have to stop because of it. It's not really good, and that's where maybe people feel like difference between the people that do have diabetes and the ones who don't. I think it's, first of all, when I was a kid, I always talked to my doctors and tried to get a lot of information so that I could act with that, like how much could I eat, how many times before the competition or the activity, how much insulin I was going to have for that food in case I was going to do some sport after. So that led me to maybe to the discipline to nowadays as an athlete, like competing professionally, be really organized and know when to eat and when to do it and how much insulin I have to take if I'm going to do some sport. Okay, so I tried a lot of different insulins, like the base of 24 hours or maybe 12 or maybe 36 hours. Now I'm staying with one of 12 hours because that for me, it can adapt because of the sport I do. So I can like spread the day in the night and in the day, and even days I train and days I don't train. So I can manage the volume of insulin that I take in which days I will do activities or which days I won't. So I think it's being really organized and have a really methodic life so that you know when to eat and when to do stuff. For example, I try always to, of course, when I do sport, I always want to have something with sugar. Like, for example, I always took like a juice of 200 milliliters, because I knew with that juice, with that sugary juice, I could just get out of the hypo. So that always make me like more easy for me to do the sport and be really like chilled with that. So I always have in the side of the field some person like a trainer or a physio or someone who's watching the game. Okay, you hold me this and you don't give this to anyone. If someone wants to grab a little bit of Gatorade, you say, no, this is for Felipe and just for Felipe in case of an emergency. So that for me is very, very tranquilizer. So I always do that in the field. And I always try to eat at least 2 hours before I do sport so that I can give my insulin, like the quick insulin. So I know that when I start doing sport, I almost have no left in my body. So the effect is already run out. And those are all factors and things that will make me practice a sport and just focus on what I'm doing in the field, so that I don't have to think of anything else, of having an hypoglycemia or feeling bad or thinking, oh, maybe I have to be like this or stuff like that. I just want to compete and want to be the same as every people in the field, so that I can be equal and get to do the sport and be the best I can doing the sport and just forget about diabetes at that time.
Thank you. That's really insightful. Marie has mentioned that in order to people to start practicing sports, they need to be physically active. And also Felipe said that in the end of the day, it's not about being a professional athlete, it's about moving. So Fiona, could you please in lay words differentiate the concept of physical activity, exercise, and sport, so we can be on the same page and understand what we are advocating for?
Yes. Oops, Daisy. Hold
Yeah,
on.
we can hear
I've
you.
just lost the controls.
We can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Thank you. Yes, I'd be happy, because the terms are often used interchangeably, and in most cases it works, but there is a difference. And physical activity, to those of us in the health sector, is a real umbrella term. It means everything we do from movement. So walking around, going up the stairs, walking to work, cycling to school, and it would include sport. Sport, however, tends to then be a more specific term, because it refers to the types of activities we're doing in a more structured way and governed by rules and ways of playing the activity. So you can see they immediately are one in the same, but then one is rather different. So rugby is a sport. Rugby is physical activity, but we all know rugby by being the rules. Now, exercise is, again, a term often used and was used very much instead of physical activity, because we are moving for the health benefits in a formal, repetitive, sustained way, exercise, to get those benefits, which are fitness. So exercise and fitness are also common terms where we move for the purpose of getting fit. What we tend to do at WHO is use the term physical activity, and we recommend it in the health context because it's most inclusive. And so it means anything and everything which people like to do, and they should choose what they enjoy doing. We do know that sport can be off-putting for some people. And if we think of older adults who perhaps didn't play sport as a younger child, they may not feel that sport is something they're going to do. So if we only promote sport, then they'll be saying, well, that's not really for me. I'm not sporty. And we often hear this from women and those who haven't had either very much sport in their childhood or not very enjoyable experiences. And I think we can all remember sometimes not enjoying the sport, and those people therefore don't regard sport as something for them. And we also have to watch that sometimes exercise and fitness is portrayed at a higher level of intensity, at a higher level of effort. People look fatigued, worn out, sweating. Some of us enjoy doing that, and we choose to do that. But I'm afraid too many, particularly adults, and I think teenagers, say that's not for me. I don't like that. I don't enjoy it. I'm not comfortable. And if we're truly going to listen to those, then what we call it and what we show as examples is really important. And there's been a lot of discussions through COVID about the need to reframe physical activity in sport, show it in more diversity, show it in more ways by more people of all abilities, shapes and sizes and ethnicities. So we're very much enjoying this conversation and looking to see how, as we promote through legacies, through sport, we change and reframe to be really inclusive, with or without chronic disease, and at all levels.
Thank you very much. Denise, you might want to say something.
I like very much what Fiona just said, because for talking people with diabetes, as Philippe told us about the fear of having hypoglycemia, and to start a physical activity may be a challenge for them. So what you said is very important, because when you are present to some persons like with diabetes that are athletes, they say, oh, that's for them, not for me, because they don't have hypoglycemia, they know how to manage, but I don't know. So small tips, or try to introduce a physical activity, something that they can appreciate and then can manage easily the hypoglycemia, to be wonderful for this population, not only for type 1, but mainly for type 2 diabetes, because for them to go on for a physical activity is very difficult. So what we said is very important, to call attention. There are a lot of things that they do for being activity, and so we have to promote them, to show them that they have new ways or different ways how to get that.
That's perfect. Talking about making like physical activity more accessible, I have one question to you, Denise. Like, often, as Felipe said, people don't live professionally out of sports, nonetheless, physical activity in a really packed and tiring and stressful routine, how can we fit, even if in small doses, how can we incentivize those people, especially who live with type 2 diabetes or are on potential chance of developing type 2 diabetes? How can we support them? What tip would you give to them in order to give the first step?
I think the important thing is to give tips how to do that. Like you don't have to be an athlete from now to 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month, 1 year. You have to go slowly. And everything, as we said, what we have here, every movement counts. So that's the main thing, how to make them find a way to be activity. As you can hear now, I have my dogs. We can start with carrying our dogs to go out and to, that's a movement they will enjoy, and also us. So small things that they can do, and then try them to, or to challenge them to make them something different in the other way. For instance, you can start for 15 minutes every day. It's not something that is it's not able to do. It's easy. So start slowly, and then you can improving slowly by slowly. You have your whole life to do that. So start. That's the first beginning. So I think the first advice that we can do is start slowly, but you can, and you see that you can feel better, and you would like to improve that. And something that we have to do is to give also like models as a daily life. Someone who has diabetes, for instance, but is not an athlete, but it goes to the gym or goes to do something like dancing or something different, and try to show different things that normal population like this that we are saying, and try to make it attractive for them. They can find something that they will like it. It's impossible to not find something.
Definitely. We ask in the question some of the biggest challenge that our audience face to exercise daily, and something that caught my attention was finding a safe area and with a good air quality. We know, Fiona, that recently the WHO has updated the NCD framework 5x5 by including as one of the key risk factors air pollution. What precautions people living in big cities, crowded cities, on which there's poor air quality and also a lot of traffic, what they can do concretely to exercise but lower the risks of getting injured, of developing other chronic conditions?
Yeah, thank you. You're quite right. WHO has recognized the importance and role of air pollution to chronic disease, and it's become one of the fifth of the five set, if you will, of leading killers. And on the other side, the mental health. So we now have a rubric of 5x5, 5 diseases and 5 risk factors that we are looking at to reduce, to improve everyone's health. In terms of being active, environmental concerns and consequences are, of course, impinging, whether it's heat, which we've experienced in dramatic consequences this year, and others where it's cold, or the topography of the geography, and of course air pollution are barriers to being active. It's a very specific area of science to look at the detriment of being active in outdoor areas where high pollution, and of course the high pollution is detrimental to health, and yet being active is positive to health. So should we be active outside for the positive benefits, but by doing so, we are exposing ourselves to some negative. Very complicated to do this balancing and measurement. There are reports that show the benefits outweigh that increased risk, because we may not be outside for very long. Now, it then depends how high air pollution you're talking and how long you exercise. And there's certainly concerns for sports and activities, marathon runners, long distance. These are exposing themselves to very high levels and duration. And that is a major concern. And we are seeing the sports sector, of course, be very, very vigilant on managing those risks and events. So it's a very important area. And I think really for the primary reasons that the air pollution is contributing to climate change, to poor cities, to poor health, we have a global agenda to improve air pollution. That will benefit physical activity. But I apologize to the colleagues who are raising this question. Do we have a clear answer now, other than exercise indoors? That's the best recommendation on high pollution days.
Yeah, I think even though that has been being studied for a quite long time, there are more, I would say, questions than answers, and throughout the way we will figure it out and decide what works best for everyone and these specificities.
But Bruno, it is interesting, and just it goes back to every move counts. That is the amazing, powerful influence of being active. It really is good for the whole system. But yes, breathing polluted air is not good. But the fact that the science is still showing going for a walk to work, of course we must mitigate. We must mitigate by not walking in areas of high pollution. And those who live in areas where there's choice, it's possible. And it goes back to the equity issue. We must be designing, as Paris has spoken, designing the neighborhoods to protect everyone from the pollution, to mitigate and remove the pollutants, whether that's transport emissions or environmental and industrial emissions. So it is complicated, but I think the power of every move counts stands very tall, that we should be working hard together to give everyone opportunities.
Thank you. Talking about criticity, I see that you have your hand raised, Nupur. So before you open your mic, I just want you to, after state what you want to say, just answer this question that came from the audience. We know that nutrition is directly linked with physical activity, especially for those who depend on insulin. But in some settings, there are no healthcare professionals, there are not dietitians or physical activity counselors that have the experience needed in terms to advise, to give proper advice. So based on your own work and on your own experience, what do you tell for those people who want to do, who to start to move, but don't really know how to regulate that with the nutrition, with the nutrition aspect of it?
Yeah, thanks, Bruno. So I think this is a very real problem. There is a lack of funds, or there's a lack of access to the right kind of professionals. There are a couple of points that I have to make here. One is for T1Ds, I saw another comment that said I get a hypo 30 minutes into a run, and I think one of the important things to do is speak to your healthcare professional and get your basal tested. Your long-acting insulin, you need to titrate it to make sure that it's just right for you. Too much and you'll go into hypo, too little and you'll go into hyperglycemia. The second thing I wanted to say is that there are different types of exercise and they impact your blood sugar differently. So when I go for a walk, my blood sugar either stays stable or goes down. But if I weight lift, my blood sugar is going to spike up. So aerobic exercise and anaerobic exercise, you have to study the impact of these different types of exercises on your blood sugar. You have to be a bit of a scientist, sit down with a paper and pen or an app and, see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Another thing, and I think all the panelists have said this, keep trying, keep at it, don't give up. Don't exercise when your blood sugar is too high, when it's over 250. Yes, I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are moving towards the end of our discussion panel. If I could, I would stay the whole day talking over and over about this topic, which I'm a living example of the importance that physical activity, physical exercise, sports do, not only in terms of blood glucose management, but also when it comes to mental health. So in order to close this discussion panel, I'd like to ask one question to each of you, and I kindly ask you to answer under 30 seconds. So starting with Felipe, what is the importance of having athletes living with diabetes competing professionally?
Sorry, can you re-ask the question?
Yeah. What is the importance of having athletes living with diabetes competing professionally?
I think it's a living proof that anyone with diabetes can do what they want. Like maybe you can call it a dream or stuff like that, but it's real. Like if you want, you can go for it, and you can definitely achieve. It just depends on you. On the limits are only in each one's head.
Thank you very much. Nupur, what's harder, managing your blood glucose or doing ultramarathons?
Oh, I think some days are hard, and managing your blood glucose is the harder one sometimes.
Thank you. So for Denise, if I don't practice any physical activity and after this inspirational webinar, I'd like to start, where should I start with?
Oh, I think the best way is to start slowly. And if you have diabetes, it's a good advice to see your team, just because if to check if you have any diabetes complication, or if you are asymptomatic, don't have any thing, to be aware how to start, and to be short, have your glucometer with you, check your blood glucose, try to do what our Nupur told us about, learn by yourself, because it's something that is very important for you to how to manage your glycemia. Otherwise, you don't have a good experience and you decide not to go on. So start slowly. If you can have others to help you.
Thank you. So for Fiona, we all know that screen time is a huge problem. How technology can be used to foster physical activity between especially adolescents?
Well, that's an interesting topic. I think there is innovation in the digital industry sector to create games which encourage people, and particularly adolescents, as you ask, to move. This is actually moving the body. We're actually going to be launching one of those kinds of games during the forthcoming World Cup as one illustration. I think it's a challenge to industry to come up with more exciting games to engage children, but also digital tools can be used to find out where to go, find out something they enjoy, and be inspired by other speakers, other sports practitioners, elite champions, etc. So the digital space is clearly one to communicate with that age, and going forward, the whole population. We need to be creative and use it in multiple ways.
Thank you. And last but not least, Marie, what has been the biggest challenge in creating policy and programs to foster physical activity?
The biggest challenge is to do something simple that can talk to everybody. That is a challenge, you know, the simple things are always the more difficult things to do. We have lots of programs, but it's too complicated and nobody is implement them. So I think simplicity, to talk directly to people and to touch their heart in order to convince them to be active, because at the end of the day, we want that people be active.
Thank you very much. So before we finish, I'd like to get back to the basics and to the inspiration of this webinar, which is the Kids and Diabetes School Program. So would like to close this webinar with some key information about the program. So if you could please move to the next slide. So diabetes in youth. Denise shared a few figures when it comes to the global perspective of diabetes, but when it comes to youth, we know that we have more than 1 million children, adolescents, and young adults living with type 1. Type 2 potential to become a global public health issue in youth in the upcoming years. And so it's important and fundamental, I would say, to promote and create healthy and inclusive school environment. For children, as they say, school is not only an educational hub, but also a home outside home. Next slide. So Kids program has been first developed back in 2013 by IDF and SPAD with the support of Sanofi. It was first piloted in Brazil and India, as previously mentioned, and there are two implementation models. One is of the ad hoc sessions, on which has been implemented in over 45 countries, and then the structure format we count with the support from policymakers, local NGOs, and other partners. And we are happy to disclose that soon we'll be turning to 11 countries. So far we have been in over 2,000 schools, impacting almost 20,000 teachers and over 340 children. Next slide. So we have a bunch of resources available in our website, from the Kids Information Pack to the Kids Advocacy Toolkit, which I highly recommend you to download in order to be better prepared to advocate for the implementation of the Kids program on your own setting. Next slide, please. So I'd like to move to the closing remarks, and thanks for all those who stayed with us until the end. We had over 300 people watching this live webinar, and I'm sure there will be 100 more watching the recording. So if you could please pass to the next slide. Just a few points to consider. I'd like once again to thank for Sanofi for their support on this webinar, and of course with the Kids project, with the Kids program. Without their support, this wouldn't be possible. The recording, the slides, and the feedback questionnaire will be sent to all registrants in a few days, so please keep an eye on your emails. And we kindly, from the bottom of my heart, ask you to respond to the feedback questionnaire. Without that, we cannot improve for future IDF online events. And if you have any questions, please email us to kids@idf.org. I would like to thank you once again, everyone, for this wonderful morning, evening, and afternoon. And thanks for the amazing set of panelists, so Nupur, Felipe, Fiona, Denise, and Marie. It has been a huge pleasure, and I'm sure this is going to be just the first of many conversations that we'll be having in the future regarding physical activity and diabetes. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day.